Hello, Legion. This is Hadrian. Thank you for being here. Let's play some more of The Long Dark in our Survival School series. If you are watching this on the day it came out, there's a reason that this episode was horribly, horribly late. And I feel like I've said that a lot during this particular Survival School series. But I wanted to actually talk about the forge today. And by the way, the reason I have a fire lit right next to the forge is just because I want to demonstrate the entire forge, kind of mechanic from the get-go. And that requires me to, do that once I've started the episode. But in the process of getting to where I have gotten, my feet got kind of wet. I'm not going to tell you where I am or how I got here, but we're going to talk about the forge. By the way, you might be looking at my gear going, holy crap, Hadrian. That's the most decked out, that's the most tricked out I've ever seen you in the history of the Long Dark, at least in animal skin stuff. And it is. I'm wearing rabbit skin mitts, I'm wearing deerskin boots, I'm wearing deerskin pants, I'm wearing a bearskin coat, and I also found a balaclava. And yes, this is the game that we started Survival School in. I'm at a point where I don't, because this is a tutorial series, not a let's play, I did a good amount of offline play. It took longer than I wanted it to get some of this stuff ready, but I wanted to show you kind of what a long-term survival build looks like in terms of the paper doll here, and some really nice, warmth and windproof bonuses, and some really nice items, and just what it looks like to wear the bearskin coat for that matter. So it is actually the first time I've made the bearskin coat. It takes 30 hours to make the bearskin coat. It's ridiculous, but it's also got a 20% reduction on your sprint meter, on your stamina. So just be aware of that, because it kind of sucks. But anyway, I've got this fire going, and I think what I can do, I'm just going to pass some time here by this fire for an hour and see if that's enough, because that's a really hot fire. That should be enough. Yeah, it's drying my clothes off. I started wondering when I got here, hey, I'm just walking around in the wide open. Why am I getting cold? I've got a lot of really good gear. And then I realized my feet were frozen, which reminds me, forgot to tell you in the last episode when we were talking about walking across ice, and there were some really good points that were made in the comments that I didn't know. Like, you can actually, one of the best ways to apparently keep yourself from falling in the ice too quickly is to reduce your overall weight, which basically means getting naked. So you can be like near a place where you are going to go beachcombing, and you can, but this is completely thanks to the commenters, by the way. I didn't know this because, like I said, I haven't done beachcombing a lot, but it makes perfect sense because the less encumbered you are, and the less you weigh in general, even if you're not over encumbered, the less likely you are to slip through the ice. But tell you what, I need to get some additional water, so I'll do that. So you can do that, and yeah, I had the water melting turned all the way up for a bit because I was spending some time, passing time, waiting for some bear hides to cure. But anyway, if you can find a spot where you can dump all your clothes, take everything off, and then go running for whatever you want to get, it can be a nice way to make it a little bit easier. But another thing that I wanted to mention is when you're standing on, when you start to walk around on weak ice a lot, that's what happens. Your shoes and your socks get wet because, you're standing on very, very wet, ice, and it's about to break. And so you're basically walking on water, essentially. And so your feet are not going to like it when you have been doing that for a while. So you need to make sure that you are going to be drying yourself off with a fire at some point when you do that. So, all right, let's see. I made that water. Let's go ahead. There's actually a few things I need to eat. A few partially eaten cans of stuff. Here's energy bar. We've messed around with hypothermia, so I don't think I need to demonstrate food poisoning, do I? That's pretty straightforward stuff. If you played The Long Dark for any reasonable amount of time and eaten low-condition food, especially if you're new, you probably have gotten food poisoning already. Okay, so... Oh, there's also this. Bunch of items that are just partially consumed. Ooh, 660 calories still in the MRE. Tell you what, though, I can eat that. That's most of the weight I'm carrying around. So, let's talk about forges. And then what I want to talk about for the latter part of this episode is, since I've all decked out for long-term survival, what does that look like? How do you make that work? Like what are some tips for actually surviving in a 100 game or 100-day, 200-day game of The Long Dark? And I've gotten a few things together just to start off with some basic advice, but then I want you guys in the comment section to go nuts. Any particular advice on long-term survival that I haven't covered yet in the series and do not cover in the tips I will go over after we talk about the forge, please fill in those blanks in the comments, because I would love to just discuss that in the comments and give people a nice resource to kind of refer to once they've watch the rest of the series. So let's tell you what, I'm going to pass time for one more hour because my feet are still kind of wet and that bothers me. I promise I know what button to hit. There we go. Pass time. All right. Ooh, simple parka. Really? That's probably better than... Where did the extra ski jacket... Oh, yeah, that's right. I just picked up a few extra jackets when I walked in here. A few things I need to manage. So this could come in handy, actually. I think what I'm going to do... There's a lantern fuel as well. Very nice. Yeah, I just got here. Again, I'm not going to tell you where I am or how I got here. But here's a workbench. So wherever I am, it's a pretty decent base location, right? Because we've got a forge, we've got a workbench. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay, so when you come to a forge... You know what, Mark? We'll tell you what. Let's step up here. There happens to be a bed here. So, I've got to do a few things. Got that fire going. It's plenty warm at the moment. Let me break down the extra items that I have. I've got this worn military coat that's not as good as anything that I'm already wearing. However, the parka... Actually, wait. Yes, you can do that. When it's almost always almost entirely harvested, you can actually stop it. 4.4 pounds versus 2.75. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This could be a good under item, but this is an overcoat. Well, no, the parka is an overcoat too, but this is too heavy. 4.4 pounds needs to go away right now. Done. Okay, I've got the extra ski jacket I can get rid of too. Of course, harvesting these items... Yeah, I think my fire just went away. I know you're tired. We're going to work on it. Let's go ahead and repair. Did find some sewing kits while I was looking around. Thankfully. Also, my repair skill is now higher, and my shooting skill is now higher, and my cooking skill, I think, is also a little bit higher. I played for a good bit this afternoon trying to get ready for this episode. And again, during a Let's Play, during any typical series that I would do in the Long Dark, that would all be on-camera stuff. Oh yeah, that's right, I found the second pair of climbing socks as well. Best socks in the game. Currently, anyway. Let's go ahead and repair those. There's no reason for ominous music, game. You don't have to do that. No reason to scare me, or my viewers, with your ominous tones. Alright, let me check on that parka, because I think... Ooh, it's actually quite similar. Yeah, never mind. The simple parka actually is going to get harvested because the ski jacket was a little bit lighter. Very similar condition. Okay, so now that's all of my clothing, I think. I've got these old wool socks I can get rid of. You don't always have to get rid of clothing you're not wearing. You can save it. Put it aside in case it gets destroyed. As a matter of fact, that's a good long-term strategy right there. Don't just destroy all your old clothes that you're not wearing anymore. Let's drink some water. That got our burden down a good bit. We're still carrying around some extra stuff, but I'm about to show you why that is in just a second. So let's sleep for... Hang on, how warm are we? Oh yeah, we're fine. We are fine up here. Let's sleep for 10 hours. Given the clothing that I'm wearing, I can do this. Normally you might have the forge going overnight to where there's a heat source. Yeah, we're okay. Alright, so let's talk about the forge. When you are in a long-term survival situation in the Long Dark, gearing up for the forge is something you should be thinking about as soon as humanly possible. Is that plain wood? Yes, it is. Very good. And the reason is, the forge is where you can make some of the most important endgame items, and also not only endgame items, but just items that have to do... Oh, nice, another sewing kit. Speaking of that. Items that have to do with the bow and arrow. Kind of important. Oh, good, lots of firewood down here, too. We need all of this for the forge in a second, and the metal shelf will come in handy, too. Rather than tell you why the forge is important, I'm about to show you. It'll become very clear. Oh, hi. This is why you break down boxes. 5 cans of dog food. Not the case everywhere in the world. Some of the older zones, like Coastal Highway, and Mystery Lake, even Pleasant Valley, you don't necessarily find a lot by breaking down boxes, but some of the newer zones, Like the ones at the end of the list, because they are in order when you're looking at the zone list, by the way. In general, you are more likely to find boxes with stuff inside them. Okay, 55. Oh, damn. 55, 46. At least the other pin was close. $55, 46. Damn it. 55, 46, 35. Yep. All right.
That'll come in handy.
Don't need the cash. Emergency stim I'll take. So that was kind of an underwhelming haul as far as safes go. So when you are playing the Long Dark, you will eventually find one of the two forges in the world. Again, I'm not going to tell you which one I'm at right now. Those of you who have played the game long enough know which one I'm at. And there are several things you should have ready before you even go to the forge, or when you find a forge, there are several things you need to prepare in order to effectively use the forge. First of all, you need to find the heavy hammer. Now, these are just out in the world, and you have to find them before the forge is even going to be useful to you. Thought I just heard a wolf. My ears might be tricking me, but I'm just going to hang out up here while I talk about the forge, and then we're going to use it in just a second. So, the heavy hammer is the first thing that you need to go ahead and get for yourself. I've already got one. Sometimes, on lower difficulty settings, if you're lucky, the heavy hammer will actually be near the forge, if you're lucky. Higher difficulty settings like Stalker and Interloper, not the case. You've got to scour the world to find just one heavy hammer that's probably there. Now that there's enough zones, occasionally, even on high difficulty, you can find 2. If you're very lucky, you'll find 3. But the point is, they're rare. They're hard to come by. So with the heavy hammer, you want to make sure that you find that first. You're not going to be able to use the forge without it. Second of all, you should have a hacksaw. You don't need a hacksaw, but the reason a hacksaw is important is that you use this baby to actually cut up metal. So yeah, you can take, let's actually grab a little bit more wood while I'm up here. You can take all the scrap metal that you found, and you can break down extra can openers, and you can break down other, extra toolkits that you find in the scrap metal. There's lots of items in the game. Hello. Lots of items in the game that can be broken up into scrap metal. And you can do that. It's actually a pretty nice day now, right? But, and you can do that. But that's a limited amount of scrap metal. Once you have the hacksaw, you can do this. Takes a while, but you can do it. Also, I need to eat. Let's eat the heaviest stuff first.
Gotta eat soon.
Working on it, Mark. Alright, so this is the dog food that I found. It's all fairly crappy condition, so food poisoning is a distinct possibility. But I'm going to go for it nevertheless. And thankfully, the dog food is wet, right? So we're getting a little bit of liquid nourishment from this as well. And we're already 14 minutes into this episode. Was not expecting that. Alright, definitely losing a little bit of weight. Not a lot. But the main weight is that we're carrying the heavy hammer. Once you have found the heavy hammer and a hacksaw, typically, and you've made your way to a forge with them, typically you're going to leave them there. Because they're heavy. You're not going to need them anywhere else, so just leave them at the forge. But the other thing you need to bring to the forge, and this is something else that you'll need to scavenge, most often found in caves, but the forges that are in the game also do have some nearby. It's coal. Coal is something we haven't touched on in the series yet. I'm going to break down this plank really quick. But it does something, whether you're using it in the forge or not, that's really, really cool. And I'll show you right now. We're going to go ahead and get this started. I'll use the fire striker, which I found. Haha. Found it in Mystery Lake, actually. Not going to tell you where. I can use one of my accelerants. Yeah, cedar firewood's fine. Actually, do I have a book I need to burn? I bet I do. By the way, I found something out kind of cool. I literally, let me do a quick tangent. I literally just discovered this. I never knew this about the Long Dark. But if you want to know by looking at your inventory without even looking at the script... Oh, wait, no. Hang on. I might be wrong. Okay, I'm partially right. If you want to know which books you've definitely read without necessarily looking at research already completed, if you're on a screen where you can't see, like if you're, for instance, transferring stuff into a storage container and you can't see this part of the screen here because there's other inventory slots for the storage container, and you want to know whether or not you've, completed, a research book already, yes, you can see it there if you can see this part of the screen, but if not, the book will not show up on your Tools tab if you have finished reading it, because it becomes kindling to the game. Notice how the Frontier, which one have I, yeah, this is the one that I've completed. This one is no longer on my Tools tab at all. Just found that out today. It's a little tiny interface thing. They might have recently changed it, or maybe it's been that way for a long time. But just FYI, that's a good way to tell which books have been finished and which haven't. So speaking of that, I want to go ahead and light the Frontier Shooting Guide on fire. It really doesn't matter which one. I'm just being particular for the sake of showing good fire starting technique. All right, so now we've got that going. We did find some firewood not too long ago. Now, notice that the forge has started. The more, just like a normal fire, the more that you put on the forge, the hotter it's going to get. Now, if I try to add coal right now, it says it has to take a certain amount of time before I get that far. So just for the sake of expediency, I'm going to pass time for an hour. And now we can put coal on the fire. Watch what happens. One piece of coal. Not only did we get an extra hour on the fire, but look what's happening to the heat output of this fire. Now I'm going to go ahead and pile on some of the other wood that I have, because I need this to be the main driver. Okay, yeah, I need this to be the main driver of heat. So this is a 12-hour fire. I doubt that it's going to get hot enough with what I've just put on it. We really need to put the coal on the fire, so I might need to pass some more time. So I probably got a little bit too excited there. But notice that when you are looking at the forge, there's the furnace, and there's also the forge up here. Now this needs to be 270 degrees Fahrenheit before you can even use it. Well, if you have the metric system turned on, you're using Celsius, of course, it'll give you a number in Celsius. But the point is, it needs to be a certain temperature. All right, so yeah, we need to go ahead and pass a good amount of time, actually. Let's see. Tell you what, I'm going to get up here and sleep, because I need to rest anyway. I'm going to pick up this jerry can, because why not? Let's sleep for 6 hours, because I want to get up and I want to put all the coal on this fire. To tell you the truth, I might not be able to get it hot enough. We'll see. The fire's temperature will stay the same as long as it's going. And of course, a forge is not like a typical fire. It can't be blown out by the wind. Okay, so I've just put 3 pieces on. Let's see what that does, for the sake of experimentation. Again, it needs to be 270 for the heat output. Looking pretty good. We might need to put 1 more piece on before it's done, but maybe not. So obviously you want to have as much coal as possible before you get to a forge. Reasoning should be obvious at this point. There we go. We've got our 270. Now the forge is hot enough to use. What can you use the forge for? Well, you need the heavy hammer, right? But you can make arrowheads, you can make an improvised knife, and you can make an improvised hatchet. On higher difficulties in the Long Dark, knives and hatchets don't even spawn, so this is your only way to get improvised, or to get knives and hatchets, period. So this is the 3rd and final crafting tab. We looked at hand crafting very early in the series, then we looked at workbench crafting not long after that, well, decent amount of time after that, but now we're finally looking at forge crafting. So if I wanted to make some arrowheads, it's 1 piece of scrap metal for 2 arrowheads. And it does take time to do so, so you have to keep an eye on how long you've got on your fire. It takes an hour to do that many arrowheads, and we've got 9 hours left on the fire. But you can also make, let's go ahead and make every item type. It takes 3 hours to make an improvised knife. So just kind of good to be aware of that, right? Okay, it's looking like we're going to need to drink some water. All right, we still have 6 hours left on the fire. Storm's brewing behind us. But as long as we're right next to the forge, we are totally okay. This thing's putting out more than enough heat. And it takes 4 hours to make an improvised hatchet. Let's go ahead and do it. We're passing most of the night doing this. Done. Now, again, notice that there's more time left on the fire than there should be, considering we just took 4 hours. This has to do with the fact, evidently there's a mechanic. I didn't even know about this until I was doing this survival school series. This is a detail of the Long Dark that takes a lot of attentiveness to the numbers of the game, like really closely watching, how long certain things take, which I tend to play more just based on, my needs at any given moment, not paying attention to the min-max aspect. Min-maxers, as a playstyle, you might be more inclined towards spreadsheets and, keeping track of how long exactly things take. But for me, it's just not something that I picked up on. And that is that outdoor fires, they calculate time differently. They last longer than indoor fires. So indoor fires last exactly as long as they say they will. So if you have a 2-hour indoor fire and you rest for an hour, when you're done resting, you'll have an hour left on the fire. If it's an outdoor fire, for whatever reason, it doesn't take quite as much time. It seems to be 2/3 to 3/4 of as much time. The fire just seems to last longer, which is nice in a way. I just don't know what the explanation is, or even if it's even intentional. So just know that. It's a minor detail, but it's there. Oh, this reminds me, while I'm eating some of the food that I picked up getting ready for this episode, a couple of people have mentioned, the importance of, right now I'm filling my stomach up a good bit there. We're at 1,700 calories for, my character at the moment. And it's important to remember, especially as a long-term survival strategy, and we'll talk more about the list of specific tips I have in just a second, but it's important to remember that you don't have to do that all the time. The only reason you should be eating to be full is when you know that, for instance, you might be almost out of food and you are about to go on a long trip where you don't necessarily expect to find much food along the way, and you don't want to be losing condition due to starting to starve while on the way. If that's not the case, you should only eat about as much as you need. If you're in an area where you're actively scavenging, if you're in an area where you're actively hunting, you only need to make sure that you have enough calories to get through the night. You only need to make sure that you have enough calories, to keep yourself from losing condition due to being starving. Like I said much earlier in the series, there are some players who advocate a strategy of intentionally starving yourself throughout the day, because condition recovery at certain difficulty levels is actually faster. And you can change this in custom difficulty, but at certain difficulty levels, it's actually faster than the condition drop during an entire day while you're starving. So if you go to sleep and do all your eating, just enough calories to where, because when you sleep, you can see, I'll show you, you can see how many calories it's going to burn. So if I wanted to sleep for 10 hours, I would eat 700 calories right before bed, having starved myself all day, and I would get up and my condition would actually be better. Yes, I would lose condition through the day due to being starving, but that's one way to play the game. I actually don't advocate that. I think you should enjoy more the spirit of the game rather than play the system. But again, it's everybody's game. So, you can play how you want, and I want to make sure you know what techniques are available to you. If you want to do that. I don't find it particularly realistic. I think a character in this situation would definitely ration themselves, but whether or not they would go, to the end of the day, every single day in that way, and never, eat anything during the day, or if they just get a fresh kill and have like a lot of fresh meat, it's more sensible to me that, there would be liberties taken at certain points when it was possible. But, it's all how you interpret the story of the game. That's one of the things that's great about the Long Dark, is that you can kind of experience it as you wish. So let me go ahead, unintentional Princess Bride reference. Anyway, let's go ahead and we're going to sleep here. And when I wake up, the forge fire should maybe be out. Okay, yeah, it's out. You can tell it lasted almost the whole 4 hours, even though it wasn't supposed to. 39 days, 19 hours, 34 minutes. Yeah, I played a lot today in this save. It was mainly just passing time, waiting for the second bear hide to cure. I killed the same bear once it respawned. There's some more scrap metal. So now that we're leaving the forge behind for a second, I'm not going to go far, but let me drop all of this stuff that I no longer need. And I think I still have 2 coal. Yes, I do. And we have this book as well that I haven't read yet. Oh, wow, it's a 10-hour book. Didn't know that. And the jerry can I definitely don't need. It's way too heavy. Heavy hammer I don't need. And if no, now we have these improvised tools as well, if you want to see what they look like. Oh, look, I also have a flashlight. I picked that up while I was out and about. If I have a chance to show you, if we have an aurora before the series ends, well, before this episode ends, really, because the next episode I'm going to be playing yet another save, a different one from either of the ones I've done so far, because we're going to start talking about high difficulty play and some ways that it's different than playing on Voyager or even Stalker. All right, so yeah, I think I'm going to drop the hacksaw, and I'm going to drop... Notice that the improvised hatchet is heavier than the actual hatchet. Something to be aware of. Now, what else was I going to drop? I was going to drop another tool, right? I guess I already dropped the heavy hammer without realizing it. That's fine. Okay, so the heaviest thing I'm carrying now... I could drop the flashlight, but I'd... Tell you what, here's what I'll do. If we by chance get an aurora before this episode's over, I want to have the flashlight sitting right here so that I can show you what it's like to use it. But let me just go ahead and drop this newspaper. Okay, good. We're no longer encumbered. Perfection. Also, I do need to eat, and that's another way to go ahead and lose some weight. We might get food poisoning from this moldy chocolate bar. I'm going to eat the even lower condition moldy chocolate bar. Tempting fate. Okay, good. Oh, Voyager, you too nice. Okay, so before we end the episode, let me talk about some things. And I might have mentioned these things earlier in the series too, because I feel like this is going to be partially recap. But when you are going for long-term survival in the long dark... Hello, dear. How's it going? He's running because I got a bearskin coat on. That's a thing. That is actually a thing. If you have a bearskin bedroll or a bearskin coat, you're more likely to scare wolves off because you're wearing it. So if you take the risk of killing a bear, it will pay off. So let me stand up here where we're well away from any predators. I also know there are moose in the area here. So you never know, we might see another moose before the end of this, if we're lucky. Actually, I don't know that there's one like right near where I am, but when I was on the way here, I saw some trees with their bark chipped. Well, this is interesting. Wonder what's up here. So, first of all, before I say any of this, as far as tips for long-term survival, the higher difficulty you're playing on, the longer you'll have to spend in a nomadic playstyle, period. So even if you are one of those players that was asking me, hey, if I want to be more sedentary, if I want to settle down, what do I do? If you're playing on high difficulty, know that you're going to have to be a nomad for a while, whether you like it or not. Sorry. And second, the higher difficulty you're playing on, the more important all of this advice becomes. Not only the advice I'm about to offer, but chances are most, if not all, of the advice that you're going to be offered by other players that come to comment on this episode. So just know that. Well, this goes way back here. Cool. So number one, and we did definitely talk about this earlier in the series, but just to recap, choose base locations wisely in the long dark. Okay, if you're going to go any reasonable distance whatsoever from your base, always assume you might not come back as well. So you want to have a nice central base location that can get to, different zones in a reasonable amount of time. And then, hang on, let me get myself to a nice view here. There we go. Nice midday view of insert zone name here. Anyway, so the number one piece of advice is make sure you have chosen your base location wisely. Even if you're not settling down yet, you're gonna have a location where you store extra supplies that are too heavy for you to carry around everywhere. So be smart about where you put that stuff. That's number one. Number two, conserve everything, primarily matches, but not just matches, also bullets. And tip number three has to do with bullets. But with matches, for instance, you can light fires in the long dark using lit torches and even lit flares. So in some cases, a light source you were using to get to shelter can also be used to start your fire. Instead of using 2 matches, you use 1 in that case. So just be aware, especially before you have a fire striker, but especially on higher level difficulties where fire strikers are harder to find, if not impossible to find, you want to conserve your matches because they're a limited resource and that's how you start fires. So Talked about that early in the series as well, but just a reminder, conserve everything, including matches. Also conserve bullets. Number 3, kills should take 1 shot, 2 at most. If you fire more than 2 shots to down an animal and you haven't hit it to where it's going to die eventually, consider moving on with your life and looking for another means to survive the night, just because those bullets are important. It's a little bit less important once you have the bow and arrow because you might be able to get your arrow back. But even then, if you don't get a kill with your arrow right away, make sure you kill that animal because you're not going to be able to get the arrow out of the animal unless it dies. So conserve your ammunition. Kills should take 1 shot, 2 at most. Number 4, prioritize, and we talked about this earlier in this episode, prioritize discovering rare items as soon as possible. This means you'll have to be, again, a bit of a nomad in the early game, especially on high difficulty. Even if your eventual goal is to settle down, you have to really strike out and keep moving in your first several weeks of game time because you need to find the heavy hammer. You need to find the hacksaw. And yes, you need to find good clothing, but you need the heavy hammer and the hacksaw more than most tools in the game because you will eventually need to transport those to whatever forge you intend to stay at, whether it's this one or the other one in the world. And again, I'm not telling you where either of them are. Someone might spoil it in the comments. I might be mad at that person, but that's on you if you go down and read the comments and that's spoiled. So, meaning you, the viewer, not you, the spoiler. It's still on you if you spoil it, but it's not my responsibility at that point. So anyway, you will need the heavy hammer and you'll need the hacksaw in order to really take advantage of what you can do with the forge and what you can do with the game, period, by using the forge. And then finally, number 5, and this is the bit of hypocritical advice coming from me because this is something I'm not terribly good at in my own playthroughs, but manage your inventory. If you're going to be surviving for the long term, be smart every time you leave your base about what you have on you and what you leave behind. To my fellow pack rats, it's okay to be a pack rat, but still check often to make sure you're carrying only what you need. For instance, are you carrying 2 can openers? It's kind of like if you're playing Subnautica and you're wondering why you can't build your base fast enough in a particular episode, and you realize it's because you're carrying like 6 batteries at one time. Same principle. Yeah. That was a little bit of a reference to the series I've got going in Subnautica right now. But the point is, make sure that when you leave to accomplish a task, whether you're looking for supplies, whether you're going hunting, whether you're moving onto a new zone, make sure you only have with you what you need at any given time. And that includes your clothing. Clothing is a little bit easier to manage now that it's lighter when you're wearing it, but that doesn't change the fact that you should be thinking in terms of, what am I wearing? Do I really need to be wearing everything I'm wearing now that I've got, say, the nicest coat that I'm going to get in this particular style of playthrough? Also, remember that in the later difficulty settings, the nicest items in the game don't spawn anymore. So not only do knives and hatchets not spawn, but you're less likely to find things like ski jackets. Well, you'll find ski jackets, but you won't find the expedition parka, for instance, which is the nicest outer coat in the game. It's even nicer than the bearskin coat. The bearskin coat might have some leg ups in stats on the expedition parka, but the thing is, this thing is highly restrictive on movement. If you get an expedition parka, let alone 2 expedition parkas, you won't want to wear anything else on your upper body. But those high level items, and also another example is the balaclava. Balaclava is the nicest headgear in the game. You won't find them on high difficulty, so you will have to make bearskin items. You'll have to shoot bears. You'll have to shoot deer. You'll have to shoot wolves. You'll have to kill bunnies. In order to get the gear that you need. So just be aware of those tips. So again, just to recap, number 1, choose base locations wisely, always. And if you're going to leave, if you're going any reasonable distance, always assume you might not come back. That should be your base establishment and base keeping strategy. Number 2, conserve everything, primarily matches. Number 3, kills should take 1 shot, 2 at most. Number 4, prioritize discovering rare items as soon as possible. And number 5, manage your freaking inventory. For number 6 and beyond, see the comments below. And on that note, I will go ahead and stop this episode here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along. New episodes are coming out. Well, this one was a horrible example of this, but they typically come out every day at 3 p.m. I'm going to cap the series at 20 episodes, but I do intend, I think, to definitely do some additional half episodes or maybe even whole episodes on demand if someone brings up a really good point for something that I need to cover from a different perspective. So I'm not ending the series outright, but I want to make sure, now that we've had a chance to cover a much more complete version of The Long Dark than 2017 Survival School covered, I want to make sure that I have a chance to really respond to all the comments and say, oh yeah, I need to cover that a little bit better. Let me clarify this. So I'll do at least a half episode, and by half episode I mean might even just be a 2 or 3 minute clip, but I will add it to the playlist because it was important enough for me to add something where everybody sees it. That's what I mean when I say half episode. It might not be literally half length, it could be much less than half. But yeah. I'm going to head back down this direction. Thanks again for watching. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time.